What's up, guys? Dylan here, and today I'm just going to talk a little bit about the crypto market, about where it's at, what it's done this past week, my thoughts on it, and my thoughts on whether we're in a bull market, a bear market, a dead cat bounce, and how you can approach it going forward. So before we get into it, smash that like button, comment below if you're interested. If you have questions, I'd love to hear comments and then make some more videos on that. So I'm not going to show you any fancy charts today or anything like that. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think about charts and their impact on the price, or the price's impact on the charts, or how important is it to follow them and all that kind of stuff. So Bitcoin today hit I think so, it's around 39,000. When I just checked, it was like 38.8. So obviously it's probably changed by the time you're watching this video. And the market has went up over the past week from about like 1.6 trillion to about 1.8 trillion. So very strong. So we're seeing growth, right? We're getting back to almost that $2 trillion level when it was, at the low, it was around 1.5 trillion. We're seeing a lot of growth in these altcoins that were strong leading into the crash, leading up to the crash, have rebounded very nicely. And, there's some that have fallen off, and there's some that have gained more favor, or seemingly have been performing more strongly recently. They typically say that altcoins are an indicator of retail investors entering back into the market. And it makes sense, right? If you're a retail investor and you've been buying Bitcoin and you have positions really high up and you believe it's going to go up in the future, you may be less inclined to be buying it now. And this is not financial advice, so I think you should buy it, right? If you have part of your budget, Bitcoin is still the number one. But in the psychology of a lot of retail investors, in general, it's like they're willing to take a little bit more risk, especially that altcoins are down, and knowing that when Bitcoin inevitably rises in the future, it's a bold statement, but history's proven that to be fairly correct. That anyone who's held Bitcoin for, I think it's anyone who's held Bitcoin for over 4 years has never lost money. But I think it's probably less than that, with the annual growth rate being like 200% year over year. So there's a really good chance that's going to rise up above where it was earlier this year. And I'll tell you a few reasons why. But people seeing that the really discounted altcoins, because they got hit really hard when Bitcoin crashed, are putting their money back into those coins, because those are almost easy gains. And if the market doesn't crash again, those gains will either stabilize at their highs as they were before, or continue to go up as the market gets more traction. So what do I think about charts? What do I think about where it's at now and the future? So there's been a lot of anxiety, and I took a break from the posting videos and content over Memorial Day weekend. I was out back visiting family in St. Louis, so I just took the time to stay out of it, not worry about it, because there's a ton of anxiety following the crash happened, which was shell-shocking to a lot of people. A lot of people are like, "Oh, we should have seen it coming," right? All the signals were there, and it's very hard to be able to judge the market. It's easy to look back in retrospect and be like, here are the exact signals predicting this will happen. But part of things being confusing, or part of the reason why things play out, is because you don't know what's going to happen. But anyways, there's a lot of anxiety after that. People thinking, well, we're going to crash more, right? If we're going to dip down even lower, do I want to even enter back in? Is cryptocurrency over? Which is a very irrational fear, right? It's a short-term fear, and I'll address short-term versus long-term thinking and vision. And then you have a lot of people that were like, I don't know if it's bearish or bullish. Signals are pointing bearish, but there's also some bullish signals depending on what charts I look at. How do I feel? And then there, people who are in crypto, we have a bias to believe that it's always going to go up. That we look at all the good news and we try to avoid the bad news and all that stuff. So a lot of hesitation in the market, and I think it's fair to have some of that, but I also think we need to pay attention to the macro. We need to zoom out. So all of that saying is, people get so fixated on the short term, right? All the short term noise. And when you go back, it was a business mentor that said, like, look, I try to let things bother me, that if I ask myself, will I be worried about this in 5 years? And my answer is no. Then you try to let the things in the present that would cause you stress or anxiety, that if you're not going to be worried about it in 5 years, you kind of want to put that in perspective and kind of tamper that on that stress and anxiety and fear, and just be a little more easygoing with some things. And I think that's the same thing for this crypto market. It can be so volatile. There's all these movements. There's all this news, right? There's all this FUD that comes out. And the question you really need to be asking yourself is, will this matter in 5 years, right? Will this noise really matter? Like, if I believe that Bitcoin's going to 500,000, a million, that's the future digital asset layer, like monetary of a global monetary network, does it matter, right? I've seen the memes where it's like, the people selling and then like telling people that when they bought Bitcoin under $100,000 that they got a good deal. If you believe that it's going to happen in the future, right? And there's plenty of evidence to suggest that it will. Well, then you don't need to be worried if the price is, $60,000 or $30,000 or 70 or 40 or whatnot. Like, those are small compared to 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, 400,000. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't try to maximize your ROI and investment potential, but don't get so stressed out about it that you're being so nitpicky that it's keeping you up at night. And so I think a lot of people start focusing in on this short-term stuff, and they start looking at these charts and the technical analysis and being like, well, this Fibonacci sequence says this, and this one says this, and this one was right last time, but this one wasn't, and they try to very narrow their vision there. And I've told the story about Odysseus and the Greek gods. What made the gods, right, have power and control over the humans and, over the whole universe was they are immortal. So they didn't have to look at things on like a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis. They could make their plans, years, decades, centuries in the making, right? Generations, right? I've said that, and that's what they saw in Odysseus. That's why Odysseus was successful on his quest, right? It's because he was able to channel some of that energy from the gods and think steps ahead, right? Not get focused on the looking down, right? And looking in the present. He was able to zoom out and make his plans according to his bigger picture plan. And when you do that, you're able to take some of your emotions out of it. And I think all these charts and all this stuff and all this noise and all this news and all the volatility of the market can get you to focus down like what's right in front of you, which can be good, right? It's good to do that, to be present, but also when it comes to crypto and long-term strategies and trying to build wealth, trying to build a business, trying to connect with people, you need to zoom out. And I think that's very important. And I think with a lot of the charts, they try to look at, is the future going to be similar to the past, these past cycles? And I think in some ways it can be. And there are, themes and there's, from my perspective, right, there are ways markets act and operate that you can, that are similar to how they did in the past, that have these similar methods or similar kind of flows. And you can't completely disregard those. But I do think with crypto, we are entering into a phase shift to where the way that the crypto market is going to go from here on out, and this is just my opinion, I could be completely wrong. So come back in a few months and say, I told you so, or, oh man, Dylan, you're right. Who knows? It's just my opinion and prediction, which is most of what everyone says. If they're telling you what's going to happen in the future, unless they have insider information, it's most likely just their opinion on what the information they have or their feelings that they're expressing. But the way I see it is we have big businesses more and more adopting crypto, right? It's getting ingrained in our infrastructure. It's not just like something that the nerds on the internet are talking about. Like Google just announced that they are, starting August 3rd, they're going to start allowing ads for crypto on their network, on their platform. That allows people to pay to tell more people about crypto. And one of the biggest barriers for crypto is knowledge, right? Is not enough knowledge for people. I was talking to my parents this past weekend, and they're curious, right? But they haven't been educated enough, right? They haven't been exposed enough to it, and that's the majority of people. The majority of people just need more education. They need more exposure. They need to be told, by 7 different people, right, that they should start doing crypto, right? And then they may not believe it from their son, right? My parents, but they may believe it from their best friend, right? So people have different different information channels. They absorb information, and they rate whether they know it or not, they value that information to different degrees depending on who they see as an authority, who they see as like someone who's not an authority or they're not used to. So the information has to keep getting put out there for people to absorb it. But you're seeing big institutions start allowing it, start thinking about how can they restructure their companies to accommodate crypto. I've said before, big institutional investors, big institutions are starting to allow 1 to 5% of their portfolios being put in crypto, right? And that's just year 1. So what's going to happen in year 2, year 3, year 4? That's just the fast movers, right? The fast movers are starting now, because Bitcoin hitting $1 trillion, that was no insignificant feat, right? It getting there, that made it a real player, right? That allowed companies who have billions of dollars to be like, I can move my billions of dollars in and out of this without shifting the price, right? If more money goes into this, this is a really becomes a viable asset, something that we can take really seriously and that we should take seriously. And that's just going to have a cascading effect. So while I think previous cycles and short-term trends and stuff can still play out, I think we're entering a phase shift where any sort of technical analysis can be easily blown out of the water if, say Facebook allows crypto. I mean, Google essentially is investing in crypto indirectly. Google's investing into crypto by saying, hey, people who have a vested interest in promoting crypto products, services, things like that, we'll take your money. So Google is allowing the profits and the money from the crypto market, right? Because if someone's selling crypto products, services, and businesses, they are making some of their money from crypto. Google is tapping into that. So maybe it's not directly. They haven't directly announced saying, "Hey, we're going to start buying Bitcoin," right? But they might do that soon, especially if they make a ton of money from ads for people from crypto businesses, because it's a $1.8 trillion industry right now, and it was up to $2.5 trillion. So there's a ton of money in this, and so people are going to want to start getting their hands on it. It's companies, it's individuals, it's governments. They're going to be like, hey, there's money to be made here. Governments are going to tax it, right? I was thinking today, and I'll close out with this because I need to get rolling. But I'm talking about a lot of topics. But I was thinking today is like, what if there's all this fear and FUD about like the government's trying to shut down Bitcoin, and the people on the pro Bitcoin side, they are like, Bitcoin is the future. Bitcoin, like, it is the most hard, solid money, the sound money we had. Michael Saylor gave the example of traditional fiat is like having a swimming pool, right, with a hole in it. So the swimming pool is constantly leaking water. So you got to keep filling it back up. And what happens when it starts leaking water faster than you can fill it up? Well, then your wealth will it'll taper off. It will stop being able to grow and start to either plateau or go down. He's like, but Bitcoin is a swimming pool where someone said, hey, well, let's just like plug the hole to make it so where there's not a hole in there, so that you can then fill that swimming pool up, right? Doing whatever your daily activity is, whatever your job is, whatever investment strategy that you're doing, and that that's going to be there, right? It's not going to get changed, and that the exact amount of water that's going to be in that pool, right? Money that's going to be there, and then once you fill up one pool, well, you can start filling up another pool and another pool, right? Maybe you start to fill up a hot tub, right? Because you're not worried about your pool just draining money. And he's like, that allows that concept, when really embraced and understood, that allows businesses and corporations and individuals to really make solid decisions about where they invest and where their money's going, right? If you know that it's not just going to disappear because a government runs into a tough time, or like a pandemic happens and they start to print a ton more money, right? Trillions of dollars, to where now all that money you saved up is now worth less because all that trillions of dollars just got flooded into the market and you didn't get compensated for that, right? Equally, like you didn't get it. Like if they print 30% more money, your price is raised by 30%, like that pool that you had there, unless all of a sudden you get 30% just free, just given to you to compensate for that to go up, right? Now, even though you've saved that amount, it doesn't do you anything. So that's very powerful. So all these institutions, governments, businesses, they want a piece of that pie. And I was thinking, so what if a government was like, well, we're just going to embrace this, right? What if the Black Swan event, and this is optimistic bias, but what if the United States was like, well, we're in a predicament here. It's not necessarily great that we printed all this money and we don't necessarily want to lose full control, but what if we just embrace this new system before other people embrace this new system? What type of strategic advantage could we get there, right? They probably won't, but what if they did? What if they're like, yeah, let's just be innovative and let's push this boundary. Like let's make this happen. What if we could use Bitcoin as our backing for our dollar, right? What if we could make that the global, especially because the United States, it has this dollars as the reserve currency all over the world, right? Perhaps, maybe if they look at it like, oh man, Bitcoin's a threat to that, or what if they're like, well, what if we were the first movers on this and took control, right? And that could be a really good thing. I mean, it'd probably be a good thing for Bitcoin because you now have one of the biggest entities in the world that's investing in it, right? Got the government the size of the United States, right, now investing in it, embracing it, and saying it's political, like it's accepting it, right? It's welcome, right? Versus opposing it. So, that could be really interesting. But what if another country does that? Like, this would be something that our the top strategists and stuff in the country for international relations and even war would have to think about. It's like, what if if this is true about Bitcoin, if we take that as true about what its potential is, where it's going, its growth, and we can't stop it, what happens if we don't embrace it, right? What happens if we don't understand it fully, if we don't lay the groundwork now to where we are the one that's in a more beneficial position versus some of our rivals? So that's something interesting to think about, something interesting to ponder. So, they could try to smash it, or, that could be a very positive black swan event that catapults it even further to the future. So with those thoughts, with those things in mind, I think we're entering into a totally different phase of this, but I'm just some guy on the internet. So make sure you go out and do your own research, but think about all these things and don't get too sucked into the day-to-day, minute-to-minute, hour-to-hour cycles and news and FUD and all that stuff. Zoom out and keep looking at things from a bigger perspective and be like, will this piece of news matter in 5 years? Maybe it will, maybe it won't, right? What really matters, right? Will Bitcoin be shut down in 5 years? And if you don't believe it is, it's like, well, where will it be in that time? And how can I make my decisions today to set me up best for that time in the future? Not how can I make my decisions today to make me better off just for tomorrow or in the next hour or the next 20 minutes. It's like, how can I set my future self up? And the more you can do that, the less emotional you'll be in the present, the more strategic you can be, and I think the more success you'll have. But I'm just some guy on the internet. So if you like this, please smash that like button, hit subscribe, comment below and let me know what you think. And that's it for today. Peace.